Sometimes I liken painting miniatures to colouring in, but 3D. Well, with the help of Army Painter's new Speedpaint Markers, that's very much a thing now. So I get to do some colouring in, so join me as I grab some minis, use these paints, put them through their paces, and yeah, colour in some toys. I'm Peachy, and this is Peachy Tips. Now, pens for painting aren't a new thing. They've been around for a while. I mean, you get like watercolour pens that obviously are more like brushes than pens. You've got gunned down panel liners. So they are a thing, and there's a fair few other brands out there. But the Army Painter reached out. They said, look, Peachy, I know you're part of the factory team. I've not actually worked in the factory yet. I don't know when I'm supposed to do that, but I'm part of the factory team. They sent me a set, said, do you want to give them a try? I was like, okay, pens. Not done that on a miniature before. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it a go. I mean, I'm used to colouring in on paper, but not on models, except with a brush, not a pen. I don't know, it just feels sort of wrong somehow, using a pen instead of a brush. I don't know why. I mean, I've used a panel liner, I guess, so it should feel right, Peach. But it just, I don't know, it just feels different. Now, there's 10 paints in the set, so most of your colours are all covered. Obviously, there's no white. In this video, when I do the painting, I will need to use some white to tidy up because it's from a white undercoat, because they're speed paints. And there's no flesh yet. So this is like the first set, I guess. Maybe there'll be more. So I need some flesh to paint on the fleshy parts. So I'll be using a brush for those bits. So forgive me, it's not 100% markers. There is a couple of like brush bits involved, so do forgive me for that. I am going to make it a little bit harder for myself. I'm not going to do a larger sort of like heroic scale figure like some Warhammer figure or like a giant or something like that. I'm going to do some 28mm foot knights and men-at-arms because I'm painting some stuff up for 5 Leagues from the Borderlands and Baron's War, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to try them out on heraldry. I'm going to paint some heraldry with pens and see how that goes. It's going to be a car crash or not, we don't know, we'll see. Future Peach does know, but he's not going to tell you because that would ruin the flow. But painting, we're going to do that now. Or from a white undercoat. Let's crack on. So the first thing you'll need to do with these speed paint markers is get some of that speed paint actually into the tip. So all you need to do is just get the actual lid cap, flip it around, and then just depress, and it will slowly soak down towards the actual felt tip pen. Obviously, this is sped up a little bit. So I'm just letting it just flow in, and you can see it's just working its way down to the tip, and then it's ready to start colouring in. So we'll start with silver first. So that's going to be our first colour on our foot knights. So all I'm going to do is just start, well, colouring in some chainmail, some helmets, some swords, and all that kind of stuff. So as you can see, it isn't too flimsy when it comes to the tip, so it's very sturdy, which I was genuinely surprised by because I was expecting it to be a little bit more flimsy. But yeah, it's really, really good. A lot of control. Regardless whether you're a new or an old hat to paint in, holding a pen isn't something new to you, or at least I hope not. So you'll have the muscle memory there for that. So you might find you get more control when you are using a marker as opposed to a paintbrush. So it's worth giving it a try, see how you get on. But yeah, I'm just going to go around, get all these silvery bits done. Again, ideal to do this over a white undercoat. I've not tried it with other ones yet, so I might see how I get on with that. But first of all, I'm just going to do it on some white undercoats, just have a bit of a play around. Next up, I thought I'd try the hardened leather colour. So I'm going to do this over the jerkins that some of these guys have. Normally when I'm using speed paints or contrast, I like to thin them down a little bit more. So the consistency of this is kind of like, I guess, neat from the pot. If you're someone like me who likes to thin it down a little bit more and do a couple of thin coats, then you can always add a little bit of medium, I guess, into the marker because the lids do come off. But yeah, it looks fine. It's getting all the recesses. It's doing what I expect a speed paint to do. It flows very nicely. Of course, don't forget about doing things like footwear as well. Again, some decent neatness here. I have splodged a little bit on the trousers there, but I can fix that later on. That's not a problem. I will need to use a little bit of like off-white just to do that. And of course the straps as well. I realised that I did paint the buckles and then I've just gone over that with some brown now, but that's fine. I can sort that out later. At one point I did have a helping hand. I say a helping hand. A small child came in to observe me colouring in a model with a pen. I'm going to get him to have a crack himself at some point, which should be good fun. So see how he gets on with that. Of course, the back of the shields as well. Need to get those coloured in. So what I'm going to do now is just work my way around and tie up any bits I've splodged on because I want to apply some other colours onto that surcoat. So any kind of areas where the brown's bled into like some of the other materials and stuff, I'm just going to go fix that. It's part and parcel of using these speed paints, contrast paints, express paints, whatever. With the tidy ups done, I'm going to move on to using some poppy red. So I'm just going to work my way around, picking out some different materials and stuff, and then just painting them with that. Again, works really well. Being fairly neat here, just because there's obviously that chainmail around his head. I have splodged in places. Again, I can correct that later on with the silver, because the silver, like I said, it does cover very, very well. A little bit of fine detail on the helmet. I was just playing around with that. It wasn't actually part of the script. I just thought, I'll give that a go. And of course, this guy, I'm going to give him a little bit of red. Seems to be the main colour I'm using for all these dudes, actually, is a little bit of red. But I was a bit sort of worried that I might get a lot of this onto those other areas I've covered, like the silver bits on the chainmail there, on the sleeves and around the neck. Then I get some Gravelord Grey and then start colouring some other areas. So I'm going to do some hose on this guy, just to break up the shape a little bit more. Again, it just adds a little bit of visual variety. But also wanted to try some of the colours. That's the whole point of this. Give him some grey-black sleeves as well. But yeah, getting what I expect from a speed paint. Some highlights, some shades. Also, when I was using these, I thought, you know what, I might have a go at tinting some of the other colours. So I'm just using this Gravelord Grey on the hardened leather and just doing like a coat over the top to give it a slightly different finish. So it's like a darker kind of brown or a darker kind of leather, and works really well. So pretty pleased with that. Now here, I don't have any flesh colours with the markers, so I'm just applying this by brush. But, you know, there is no flesh, so I kind of need to do that. But yeah, I'm just working my way around, just pulling it into the areas. I do like to use a brush more when I'm applying speed paints, because I can pull it, I can thin it down more. But so far, I've not been that disappointed by using the marker, actually. I've found it to be quite good fun to do. On the blade, I did get a little bit of red on there and a little bit of brown, so I'm just going to tidy that up. So I'm just going to work my way around any areas on the silver details that may have some other colours that have contaminated those areas. And of course, if you feel you need to, you can always add a second coat to some areas if they're a bit wishy-washy. Thought I'd give the pallid bone a go, and I thought I'd do that on the sleeves. I thought that looked quite nice, give it a different tone, because he's all in like a white surcoat. Then I'm going to do an all-over wash. I normally do this with my paint anyway, whether I've applied a speed paint or not, because I like to get that extra little bit of depth and stuff, so I've thinned it down a little bit more, but that's just my way of painting. I guess this is another colour using a brush peach. I did lie when I said I've only done it with the flesh. Big fat lie if I'm peach, but it's part of my painting, part of my army painting techniques, because I do like them. They're quite bright. The colours, they do have a lot of punch to it, but I like to make my things a little bit more grimy and dirty, hence why I'm doing this all over wash. So yeah, just work my way around. Be mindful of it pooling. As you can see on that helmet, it's pooled a little bit, so I'll just need to soak some of that off. So if you need to do that, all you have to do is just dry off your brush and then soak off any excess, or move it around, whatever. So I'm just doing that here, just soaked a bit off and then just moving some of that shade around. Now for some extra highlights as well, you could always do a little bit of dry brushing for a bit of weathering. This isn't a necessary step. I just wanted to have a bit of a play around, because you could do next steps on your models, do some highlighting on them. But I thought what I'd do is have a little bit of a go at doing some dry brushing, make it a little bit, use the same colour all over. So I'm doing that over these guys. And then maybe have a go at reapplying the marker to see if I can get a bit of a glaze effect. So I get an extra little bit of a highlight there. So I thought I'd give that a go. So I'm just going to do that here. Just work my way around on all of them, and then just get that red, certainly on this surcoat, and then just neatly go across on those lines, and that should give me an extra little bit of a highlight, and also make the cloth look a little bit tatty too. Something I wanted to try as well was weathering using the pens. So I'm getting that pallid bone which I used on this guy's sleeves, and I thought I'd just do some little stabby motions just to make his surcoat look a bit soiled or a little bit dirty at the base of it. So just doing a couple of little dots and then just stabbing it with my finger just to wipe some excess off, and then just reapply it here and there, and it kind of just looks like, yeah, soiled or dirty kind of like cloth. Again, just knocking back that leather as well, doing the same thing. I could forego on the actual belt if I wanted to, so the belt's a bit lighter. Again, makes it look a little bit different, because I did use the same colour for the belt as well as the leather jacket, jerkin, what you want to call it, hauberk. So next up, I thought I'll do some heraldry on the shields. So I thought I'll just get them all covered in first. Unlike the cloth, quite large flat areas, I did struggle with the yellow on these flat panels. So once I'd applied it, I should have probably just left it at this point, but once I started to like colour in a little bit more where it was a little bit wishy-washy, it started to get a little bit streaky here. This is where I went wrong. I should have just left it before that. It might have been fine, but yeah, I kind of just ruined it by keep going in. So this is something to avoid. This is why I want to show this. If you do see this happening, don't continue to work into it, because it will just make it worse, and you'll get super frustrated. So just, if you can, just apply it, and then kind of leave it, and it should all settle down and give you a nice flat finish. The red, perfect, goes on really well, like all the other colours. As you can see, it's not too streaky, might be a little bit thinner, so I might have to look at thinning the yellow down. But yeah, covered really well, dries quite flat and neat. So yeah, it's just something as a learning when you are applying them. If you are finding that streakiness, don't keep working into it. It's just going to make it worse. Then I thought I'd have a crack at doing some markings. So I'll just put some masking tape on. Now I know when I use acrylic paints, I want to like do some tidying up. It's a lot easier to tidy it when you're using acrylics. or normal paints with speed paints, there's going to be some bleed. I know it, but I'm just going to have a bit of a play anyway. I just want to see how doable it is. So I know under that area now that's going to bleed through, but that's fine. I'm not so fussed by it. I can turn it into chipping. I can work with it. But I just want to have a bit of a play with doing some markings, and then try other areas. So I want obviously a red stripe, so I'm covering over that, and then I'll just do some black either side of it. So this is the first kind of time I'm using grim black actually on this. Now to remove the masking tape and have a bit of a reveal. There is a little bit of bleed, but not a huge amount, so I can cope with that. A little bit more there, that's fine. I can just fix that because this is a white color. I can get that white or off-white I used earlier on and just paint over that, and that will hide it. Next up is just to hide some of that, or camouflage it as I like to call it, so you know you're distracting people by doing some sponge chipping. So I'm going to do that all over these white and red shield designs. Nice and simple, straightforward. Just get some old packing sponge from like figure cases, put into like your brush sleeve. Then reveal of the red band there. Again, bit of bleed, not so much of a problem. I want to do a half and half as well. I thought I'd go at just going back over a little bit of red, see if that kind of hit it, but it didn't. But I thought I'd have a bit of a play. I like to use knives sometimes to do some extra chipping. So what I decided to do was, though removing that little bit of bleed, I could actually start having some extra weathering effects by rubbing. I rubbed this with my finger and I was like, I quite like that effect actually. So I'm going to keep that in. I could have hidden that and not shown it on the video, but I wanted to keep that in. With the yellow shield that was a little bit more successful, I just did some little masking off just so I could do some little stripes and stuff. So I'm just getting some poppy red on that. So what I'm going to do now is just mask off that side because that's been dry for a while now. Give that a little bit of a mask off when I can finally get it in position. That's sometimes the key, is getting it in a nice position. Make sure it's nice and straight. You don't want to obviously have a wonky donkey bit of heraldry. And yeah, once I'm happy with that, I'm just going to colour that in. And then hopefully I have like a cool sort of like half red and then like some chevron designs, which should be quite fun. Using the bone for weathering. So on this shield where I did like that, like a little bit of extra scratches and rubbing it off and stuff like that, I quite like the effect of using a little bit of bone on there. Yes, small children fingers appearing in shot, do apologise. And also making the white designs a little bit more off-white, so a little bit more stained or weathered or sun-bleached. Again, just using the bone for that too. And of course, the old classic white finger if it's two bone. Going back to the knife chipping effect that I did earlier, I'm just going to go in for some real sort of scratches and dents and chips and this, that and the other. Kind of did it on that yellow one with the red stripes. You could just see in the background there, a little bit more heavy. When we see the 360, you'll see that a little bit more as well. But it's just a really nice way of getting some really, I'd say, fairly convincing scratches, dents, chips and whatever. So it's one of the things I used to do on vehicles all the time. I didn't really think about doing it on a shield. And then, yeah, going over with some pallid bone to make it look a little bit old and battered. But yeah, there we are. Selection of shields using speed paint markers. Very chuffed. Yes, there's some bleed. I knew that, but I'm really happy with the results. So now it's just a matter of just gluing them on to the dudes. These are all like tabletop standard, battle ready standard. You can add some highlights to them if you want to. I know I did that little bit of dry brushing, just add a little bit more punch to some of the edges. But really, if you're doing like hundreds of figures, then this is quite a quick way of getting them done. And also just prepping some masking tape to get yourself some heraldry too. And there we are, a few medieval badasses ready for the tabletop. More specifically, Baron's War or 5 Leagues, because that's what I'm going to use them for. Because I'm kind of like painting things for a reason in these videos. I honestly was not expecting to have great results. I'm going to put that out there because maybe I'm a massive naysayer, I don't know. I was like, markers, miniatures, pens. I've been proven wrong. I will stick my hand up. I've been proven wrong. They're not perfect. I'll go into some reasons why. But from a control point of view, I had a lot of control. I really appreciated that, especially when I was initially, but the first time I did it in this video was the first time I used them. There was no prep beforehand. I like to do that sometimes. I like to just dive into it. So when I started applying the silver on like the chainmail and the helmets, I was actually like, ooh, this is actually a lot more control than I was expecting. I was expecting the felt tip to be a little bit more flimsy. It wasn't. It was very sturdy. Initially, I was a bit like, how does the paint come out? And then obviously pressing it down the lid, I thought it would actually blunt the tip. It didn't. You get spare tips obviously, so if you need replacements. One thing I would be like some more fine detail ones. I don't know if that's practical, so I'd like to actually look into that a little bit more, see if there's actually some finer tips. But yeah, from a control point of view, really good. Fine detail, I would like a little bit more control, certainly when it gets to some of the nitty-gritty bits, but they still did the job. It had a good point to it. Speed wise, I find I'm faster with a brush when it comes to speed paint because I like to apply it quite heavily. This was more controlled and considered. It still had the speed paint effect, but I think it was more like on the peripherals of being a bit too neat with speed paint, but at the same time, the effects were still really, really good. I like to use shades as well in conjunction with my speed paints anyway, so applying that shade all over is not outside the norm. That was something I would normally do. Using it for heraldry was quite good fun. I normally would use acrylic paints because I can easily tidy up. I would never really normally use like speed paints to do, or like contrast or whatever, to do like heraldry, because there's so many things that can go wrong, especially when you're putting masking tape down. It will bleed under. I expected that did happen, but just using like a knife or like chipping and stuff like that to hide that worked quite well. The black's quite strong as well, like I'd expect from Grim Black. Dries super matte, covers over a lot of things. So all in all, from a control point of view, a finish point of view, really, really like them. My biggest sticking point was I had so much trouble with the yellow. I don't know if that was a situation with the pen I had. I'm going to take the lid off and add a little bit of medium into it to thin it down. Might change it a little bit. But it was, all the others were, sometimes look quite streaky, but then they're dry and it was fine. But the yellow, I just really struggled with. I can't talk for the green, the blue and the orange because I didn't really use them in this. Maybe for another video I will. But all the others, so like the bone, really fun for using for weathering. So initially, obviously on the bottom of that night, sort of like surcoat. But then after I did all the chipping and stuff on the actual shields and just coated in there, so it looked a little bit more weathered and stained. I really like doing that. Also applying that graveyard grey to some of the leather areas as well to make the leather a little bit darker. So it's almost like tinting it. That worked quite well. I was more of a test, that was, and I was like, oh, I quite like that. It's quite a nice finish. So there's a lot of things you can do with them, straight from the pot. Straight from the pot, straight from the pen. Very easy to use, but you can mix and match and obviously highlight after, do some dry brushing for weathering, and then doing like another like coat after. Kind of felt like in the old days where I'd dry brush and then maybe do a glaze over the top. It kind of gives it that kind of effect. So they are good for a lot of things. They're going to be tools I use. I won't paint a, will I? Maybe I might paint a whole miniature again with them. I don't know. But I definitely foresee them being a tool in the box that I'll make use of in future videos for sure. Again, like I said, I'll have to look at the yellow. I'd like to see more paints as well. A fleshy one, and obviously some other shades, because there's a lot of colours I do like to use when I'm doing like the Army Painter stuff, like some dirty greens, good for weathering as well. So even like when you're doing scenery, and have a little bit of play. So in future videos when I come to like doing some like terrain and stuff, I'm probably gonna go at like dropping it into some of the nooks and crannies and doing some weathering that way. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with them. So very impressed actually for my first outing of the Speedpaint markers. Very impressed. But as always, a massive thank you for watching. Massive thank you for all your support. Big shout out to my patrons. You guys are awesome. And also thank you for all those that did come down to PeachCon as well. Obviously, I know a lot of you couldn't because you live like in other countries, or it was just like you're on holiday and stuff. So I apologise. At some point, I'm sure I'll do some foreign ones, but now I'm not going to do that because I don't want to stress myself too much. But it was great. Really had a fun time at PeachCon. There will be a video dropping in a couple of weeks' time where I just talk about what happened, show loads of pretty pictures and stuff. So that is incoming. I've got some more things to do for 5 leagues as well. So I'm going to record some of those because I've got the fight to do. So if you're not seeing the first one of that, where I go through how the game works, it's just really fun. But I've turned it into a story time because I like telling stories. So do check that out as well. But yes, thank you for watching. I'm probably going to just sit down now and get Charlie to do some colouring in with pens on my horses. That's what you have children for. You get them to paint your horses for you, because I hate painting horses. Maybe Charlie might hate painting horses by the end of this. But I've got a black, I've got a grey, and I've got a brown. So maybe another brown down the line, Army Painter. Like, you know, maybe, what's the one? Satchel brown. That'd be quite good. Some darker horse tones. Maybe a bay colour. I mean, we've got like the pallid bone. That could work. I'm waffling already. I know it. I'm aware. Don't worry, the internal policeman's aware. But yeah, get Charlie doing some. I know he turned up from time to time and helped me out. In the video. But yeah, Speedpaint markers. Pretty impressed by them. I'm going to go off now, do some more colouring in with a child and paint some horses. Peach out.